Swamp Fox. Welcome to the 6th episode of Fox Chatter. Vito back with you again. I have more things to talk about and more words to say, as normal, than I really have time to do. We have two great interviews today. The first one will be with Major Brady Fuel Augustin to talk about him winning the national level collegian safety trophy. It's an amazing story. Please stay tuned to listen to that. And then Master Sgt. Steadman Demarco to talk about ACE training over in the maintenance group. So normally I like to go a little bit slower and a little bit more detailed, but today I'm going to go a little bit faster because both of these interviews are really good and I think you're going to want to hear them. So I'm going to start with the news first, and it's going to be a little bit like bullet points. But this is stuff that I feel like people who are listening to the podcast probably really want to know. So here we are, March drill, our super drill, our first ACE exercise. By the time you listen to this, you should have already received a WARN or a PTDO, prepare to deploy order. That was a simulated exercise input to prepare the entire wing as if we were getting mobilized. The reason for that is some of it applies to everyone and some of it applies to more leadership-y people. And so we've prepared a simulated prepare to deploy order, and it is an ongoing great exercise. And what would it look like if we were told to deploy within 72 hours? What would that look like? How does the order come to us? How does it read? Is it easy to interpret? Do we understand it clearly? And then after that, how do we communicate it with you? And I'm going to use the ad hoc, and you've already heard the ad hoc messages calling you back and then telling you it's actually time to go. And so a lot of this is, once again, familiarizing ourselves with what it would look like. And then when it comes to you, here's my challenge for all of you, including myself, is we are so used to being in a deployment cycle where everything is planned and we have months, maybe even years to prepare ourselves and our family. What if we were told 72 hours from now, you're out the door? What are the things that you need to be doing now? And so that's what I'd like you all to be thinking about, because in 72 hours, you will not be able to redo your will. You will not be able to set up powers of attorney. You will not be able to figure out who's going to take care of your kids. You need to have a plan now. And so I'm personally analyzing it. My will is way out of date. I got to update it. I need to make sure that my SGLI is caught up. First of all, I'll say if you don't have SGLI, you absolutely should. There are very few things that I'm definitive on, and this is one of them. You need SGLI. You need a family care plan. It's required if both members are military, and it is something you definitely want to do if you're not. You need to think about who's going to take care of your bills when you're gone. And this is a great opportunity for us to prepare ourselves mentally. So the way this exercise is going to go is you've received your recall. You're going to show up Thursday morning. You're going to get a brief on what the simulated events that led to this were. And then it's going to be what we would normally do is we would actually generate aircraft and all of our equipment, and then we would leave. We're going to do break, simulate. When you walk in the door Thursday after the recall, you are now at Base X. You are at the MOB is what we're calling it, main operating base. And now we are starting our exercise. When we start our exercise, most of us will stay at the MOB and we will do training events. And so it will be, we'll call it out of scenario training events. And so what I have asked each of your leaders to do is come up with a training plan. I'm interested in self-aid and buddy care, or TCCC. I want you to do things that enhance your ability to be multi-capable airmen. I want you to do things that you need to do to be better prepared to deploy, but in an out-of-scenario environment. And that's what most of you will be doing over Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Some of you, however, will be part of what we're calling the primary line of effort, and that is leaving the MOB and going to the FOB, forward operating base. I would love to take every one of you on that, but part of the requirement of the FOB is not very many people actually go, because we have to do it as multi-capable airmen, and that's the whole why behind it. And so we have a crew of people that are going to go for a day and a half, and they're going to swap out with the second group, and they are all going to be operating with 5 jets spread out around our airfield. They will be in scenario the entire time. The rest of you will be at the FOB operating in scenario for the full 3 days. And we're looking to get a lot of great lessons learned out of that. And then on Sunday, you'll have the opportunity to do a hot wash. We'll get our lessons learned, what we need to do better. And then we will take care of all the rest of our admin, important things that are not exercise related that we all need to do. And then we're going to hit the road and go back home after a long drill. The other incredibly important thing going on with March drill is Super IMR, and that applies to the Fighter Wing, Joint Force Headquarters, Mission Support Group, and Med Group. This is our opportunity for half of our wing to get their IMR square and their PHAs complete. Take this very seriously. It's very serious to me. And our Med Group has done a great job making themselves fully available throughout the weekend so that we can all get these done. This must be a priority if you are in one of those groups that I've mentioned. You have to get this done because our Med Group, as you heard me in the last podcast, needs to train. And so that's why we're grouping all of these PHAs and IMR events into 2 super drills, is so that you can get that done. And I need you to do that. If you're at the FOB, you're only there for a day and a half, so you can get it done on the other part. Everyone needs to get it done. So make sure you're scheduled. And if you are scheduled, this is the most important thing you're doing this drill, that time, and you must get there for that. So thank you for doing that. In terms of other things going on, I've alluded to major changes in the Air Force coming. The Secretary of the Air Force introduced those at AFA this past month. Nothing significant will come to us immediately, but if you've listened to any of the audio or watched the videos, you'll know that stuff will be coming our way. The way we operate as a wing will probably change over the next year. We don't know exactly how, and nothing is immediate, but things will absolutely change. Brace for changes coming our way. Speaking of changes that are imminent and have come our way, we've already received from the Guard Bureau an update to our full-time manning. I was terrified of what it would be. We came out of it actually pretty good. Our full-time manning was actually increased, mostly in the technician area, also a little bit in the AGR area, but we were shown to be shorter than the desired percentages in full-time manning, and so we gained extra positions. At the same time, they reshuffled a lot of things, which is a real hassle. They recategorized some people that are AGRs as technicians and some people that are technicians as AGRs. And so we're managing that within the wing. And so what I want everyone to know for rumor control is if you find out that your position was reclassified, that doesn't mean you are reclassified. We have the autonomy within the wing to manage that. And so we're looking to do that. And we have a pretty good plan right now that only really negatively affects a few people. And even that is not I hate to minimize any negative effect on someone, but it is not like anyone losing their job or their retirement. We're managing that person by person. And so if you haven't heard anything, you're in good shape. And there are only a few people that we've had face-to-face discussions with, and we are working it out. If I am wrong, though, and you find out that you have been affected, you can come straight down to my office and we can talk about it. We are also going to have a UMD or manning document change that drops in the next month or so. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. It's less of a threat and more of a just reorganization. We're not going to lose manning out of it. What we should see is that our deployable packages change a bit, and we have excess on our deployable packages because they know we can't deploy 100% of our people. So maybe we need to set, and I'm just making up a number here, our deployable packages to 85% of our manning, knowing that we can't deploy all 100%. So that'll be more administrative, but we'll still have an impact. I'll talk to you more about it when it actually comes out. Another thing, and I don't love talking about this, but it needs to be talked about, is our number of drug positives have really gone up. And we are, disappointingly, one of the highest in the nation for cannabis positives, which really blew me away. I always put it in perspective. While we may be at the highest or amongst the highest, it's not that many more than the people a tier or so below us. And the number is still not so excessively high that it means we have it everywhere within the wing, but it's a problem. And we need to get it better at it. And so I think one of the problems is education and communication. And so if you hear your commanders talking about it more, it's because we're emphasizing it. And what I want everyone to know is the Delta 8 synthetic cannabis will pop you positive. It might be legal to purchase it but it will pop you positive for the military. And if you pop positive, the default position is you are kicked out of the military. And there may be nothing that myself or your commander can do about it. You will likely be removed from the military if you pop positive, regardless of whether it is legal. It is forbidden in the military. And so I need you to know that the Delta 8 is not legal. You are putting yourself at grave risk of losing your military career. Please stay away from that. We need to get that information out and get our numbers back down and our usage down. Kind of a cold topic. Hate talking about that. On a little bit more of a positive note, our deployers they're anxious to get home. I've been communicating with them. They're in the doldrums. They're at a little bit less than 2 months out. So the light at the end of the tunnel is still dim, but they've been there a really long time. So they're getting a little challenged. So if you have friends over there, reach out, send them a text, give them a little pick me up. We all know what it's like when you're a month and a half out from coming home. That's the toughest time. They don't have all the people reaching out to them like happened over the holidays, but they're not close enough to the end yet. This right now, I would say this next 3 to 4 weeks are their toughest time. So reach out to your friends, tell them you're thinking about them, tell them you're excited to get them back home, help them get through the next few weeks. And then by the next time I talk, they should be within a month. And that's usually when you start having a little bit of a pick me up because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they're talking with their family about what they're going to do. So the next few weeks, really important. Also in the news department, we still don't have a budget, which means we're still unable to do a lot of the things we want to do. If you listened to Secretary Kendall at AFA, he is openly and visibly frustrated and angry about it, and it rolls down here. It affects everything. Our ability to go TDY, our ability to execute what I hope will be Caribbean Fox later this summer is 100% based on whether we get a budget and how much money is available for us. So we're posturing ourselves to take advantage of what I think might be a lot of fallout money, but we shall see. Still no budget, and I understand everyone's frustration. I'm living in it every single day. Also want everyone to know about the climate survey. I talked to your commander's last drill about it and to the Chiefs Council, and I had some taskings for them. So you should see some of this addressed, but I want you to know what I saw. The first thing I would say is the version that we had to use for the climate survey this time was not as user-friendly as the past, and I would say probably discouraged participation. It was much tougher, and so our numbers were lower. And when your numbers are lower, you don't get as much feedback, but I was still able to distill it and had a few takeaways for it. The first one was we actually had some pretty good scores, or you each did, for your leadership within your squadron. So I was very happy with that. But I also think there are some great takeaways. Some of the things that I want to make sure get monitored. And sometimes, right, there are things you can fix and things you can't. But some of the things that I saw that I've addressed or asked to be addressed and are on my mind are our least happy demographic of people is our junior airmen, E1 through E4. So across the board, not bad, but 5%, 10% lower than every other demographic, right? And you could say like, well, it's just because they have the least amount of a voice in our organization and are the lowest paid, so generally are going to be a little bit less happy. And maybe there's some truth to that, but I also think we need to engage and make sure we understand what our E1s through E4s are going through. And so I've asked the Chiefs Council to address that and to dig into it because that's important to me. I don't like having a clear group that is clearly unhappier than everyone else, because I will say it caught my attention because they were lower across the board at everything. And so that tells me we need to address that. And so we will. Feel free to talk to me about it anytime you see me. Another thing that I saw that I thought, boy, I didn't love was that there was a question about passive leadership. And that was one of our lowest, that was probably our lowest grade for leadership, was that there was actually a higher percentage than I would like of people who thought our leadership is too passive. And anyone who knows me personally knows passivity is not one of my things. And so I want us to be able to get after that. I've been told, and the way I was raised in the Air Force and the way I pass on is we should make tiger errors. We should make errors of being too aggressive. Being passive is not who we want to be. And so I'm going to get after that one as well. Those were the two biggest takeaways that I had from the climate survey. And you should be hearing from your commanders and your supervisors on things specific to your unit as they address those, because that was my tasking to them, was to address each of the topics within their units. And that about summarizes up the news for the week. We're going to get into the interviews now. Our first guest this morning is Major Brady Fuel Augustine. I asked Fuel to come in for the podcast to tell the story about an award he got. It was the Kolligian Trophy, which is a national level safety award that is personally selected by the Chief of Staff, which is incredibly impressive. The actual incident that Fuel was awarded for occurred before he joined us while he was still on active duty at Aviano. So Fuel, welcome. Can you tell everyone a little bit about what happened on that fateful day?
Thanks for having me, boss. It was an interesting time in our Aviano life because if everyone remembers back in March of 2022, that was right around the time that Ukraine was about to be and soon thereafter was invaded by Russia. So it's kind of a high threat time for the NATO forces that were established in the European theater, and Aviano was no exception to that. So in the first few weeks of that invasion, we had a armed air policing presence on NATO's eastern flank, and I happened to be one of those guys on that day, and took off on a day sortie and had a blown tire presumably malfunction. And we ran the checklist and did normal blown tire procedures, which would have resulted about 90 minutes later when we were burned down gas and we're at a nice light weight to land, catching an approach end cable with the aircraft hook was the game plan. We found later, and that would be kind of the takeaway story for the SCANG members listening, is that the communication ball between the 5 or 6 critical people that found the actual aircraft problem were the people that wound up saving the day. What had actually happened was instead of a blown tire, the tire had completely separated on takeoff. So I didn't have a blown tire, I had a missing wheel. So the entire rim was gone and it was just a little gear stand and a brake pad left, which if we had done the game plan that we intended to do with the approach end arrestment, would have gone quite badly.
So let me just interject for a second here, Fuel. So just setting the table a little bit more, or the scene for this. At the time that Fuel was flying these combat sorties, he was actually supposed to be here at McIntyre. I was the ops group commander at the time, and he emailed me and said, "Hey, Vito, I have this great opportunity to do something for our nation. Do you mind if I delay showing up by several weeks or a month?" I can't remember exactly which, so that I can do these combat sorties. And my answer was, of course, yes. You capture that opportunity whenever you can. And knowing that Fuel is such a great American that he would be invaluable over there. So his reward for that was this situation with a very damaged jet. And also to kind of set the scene. So there he is, a blown tire. You can feel a blown tire on takeoff. It's an emotional event, but not an extraordinarily emotional event. It's a well-known thing, how to handle it and what to do. And so you get airborne, you have a blown tire, you know you're going to need to take an approach end cable, which is still somewhat emotional, and you basically run the checklist and burn down gas. And there's not a whole lot of extra decisions in it once you've done it. So what was it like? You're in that mindset. You know you have to take an approach end cable. It's a deal, but not a huge deal. And then how do you find out that, in fact, you have no wheel?
Right.
And what's going through your mind when that happens?
So like you alluded to, an approach end arrestment is probably going to go okay. Quite a few people have done it, and I hadn't. But my confidence is medium to high that it's going to work out. And we had burned down quite a bit of gas as our game plan was, and I was actually cleared to land at about 2 mile final. And the plan was actually I was just going to go around one more time, let my wingman land behind me, and I would have landed about 3 or 4 minutes later. And one of the fun parts that worked out not so well is Aviano had 6 cables, and we strung all of them. So every single cable on Aviano was strung because they wanted me to have as many options to do as many cable arrestments as I wanted.
Okay.
If Hook jumped over the first cable, we'd grab the second one. And at clearance to land on that 2 mile final is when Tower said go around. And what was going through my mind to answer your question was, I was annoyed because I thought they were about to tell me that they were not ready for me to land. And I was annoyed that I had been burning down gas for 90 minutes, and how could you not be ready?
Yeah, and you got mentally set. You probably locked your harness. You've got everything set. And what fuel state are you at right now?
I think at the getting ready to go around, I'm around 1,800 pounds. So in the F-16 world, I should be landing in about 5 to 10 minutes before we're starting to get in the nervous realm. Not emergency, but pretty nervous.
Yep.
And if we're talking until complete flame out decision, we probably have about 15 to 20 minutes before we're starting to think about flaming out.
Not much time.
So time is now of the essence at this moment that they say go around, and I get through the annoyed phase, and they explain that, hey, we don't think you have what we thought you've had for the last 90 minutes. And we go check it out for a minute or two, and as you can imagine, as I'm locked in mentally, there is confusion now, and people are saying words like wheel and tire, and now those words start to mean less than they meant 90 minutes ago. And the final answer was, well, whatever, let's just fly by the tower. It's a really nice day. Can I just fly right next to the tower, right over the base?
Is your wingman unable to assess the situation? I'm asking the question that everyone else is thinking.
In a fun turn of events, he has assessed it incorrectly. So he was our only initial look and said that I had a blown tire. So there leads to more confusion because you're hearing one thing from the tower and the ground personnel, and you're hearing another thing from the wingman. And
I would have thought my wingman was correct and the people on the ground were wrong, would have been my initial thought.
Was my thought too, because he's only 20 feet away from me, and the other fellers are miles.
And he's an F-16 pilot, and they are not, and he would know what it should look like.
That's correct. So hence the confusion. So the confusion is...
My stress is building just listening to you talk about it.
The confusion is growing, and the frustration is there. And when we decided, this is just too much, I'm just going to fly by the tower. And I have a good buddy that's in the tower, along with the current ops group commander and the OSS commander. They're all in the tower. And how about I just fly
Everyone's
by?
Come up to watch something very interesting occur.
That's right. And there are videos of that day because the base was on even more nerve-wracking than normal approach and arrestment, which would already be interesting. But doing it with live missiles elevated it.
Yes.
And the base is in a higher stress than normal situation with the Ukraine situation. And we are only flying combat support lines those days, so there's no CT flying. So I'm the only show in town airborne at this point of the day. And when we fly by the tower, I hadn't even made it past the tower when my buddy came over on the radio and said, no, man, that is not a blown tire. You have no wheel. So what happens now is that fuel state that we talked about is now went from we need less gas for the last 90 minutes was our game plan, has now completely pivoted to, boy, I wish we had a lot more gas.
What a mindset shift that you have to go through to be from, I'm ready to do this, I got it all solved, to, oh my gosh, the situation is now completely different. And so you... Not only do you have to figure it out, but you have to change your mindset completely
fast
to, I have to problem solve. It is not just about execution of a relatively simple approach and arrestment. This is my mindset has to go into problem solving mode, and I have a major problem and I need a lot of help and I don't have enough time to do it. And then on top of that, I can only imagine the frustration and compartmentalization that has to happen to go, somehow I wasn't informed of this in a timely manner, and I'm really frustrated about that, but I can't think about that right now.
Yeah.
I cannot think about that. I have to think about something else, and I really wish I had all that gas again, but I don't, and I can't think about it anymore. And I just have to live in the moment, and I have 15 minutes of moments to truly solve this.
That's right. That plane was coming down in the next 15 minutes, and it only mattered if we did smart things in those 15 minutes, or that thing was coming down. And at this point, it was really where some people had done some smart decisions. We do a thing called a conference hotel where we can call the Lockheed folks and discuss aircraft problems while there's a mishap happening airborne, and Lockheed can give their opinions. That was triggered about an hour and a half ago when we first had the gear issue, which I think was a bit of luck and a bit of good planning. The Shaw gear incident was not too far distant in our minds at this day, and That was probably the reason that we started a conference hotel early.
Honestly, I don't know if I would have done a conference hotel
for
a blown tire. But if you had not done that, it has been my experience that you're not going to get them on the phone in 15 minutes.
No, it wouldn't have happened. We would have not had what will eventually be one of the decision makers that allows this jet to land. So Gary Garrison doing this conference hotel, and I remember when he asked me 10 minutes into the flight, do you mind if I call? And I said, absolutely not. Waste all the time you like. Yeah. I don't care. Yep. And it wound up being a huge deal that he did that. So now we don't have a tire, and the wingman is no longer required, so we get him on the ground quickly. Because whatever happens, it is likely this runway is going to be unusable for quite some time. So now I am alone and unafraid, as people would say. And the short plan right now is probably to eject. Because we locked down the entire base due to the live missiles and my clearance to land, it is now not possible for us to de-string the cables. And it is ill-advised to land a jet in this configuration over raised cables. So the gear portion is probably going to snap, and we're probably going to result in some type of cartwheel situation, and it's probably not going to go well. So ejection is the plan. And the Italian rescue helicopters, who are our main combat search and rescue assets, have been scrambled. So the Italian helicopter is airborne, and the Italian controllers give me a coordinate that they would like me to fly to, which is right at the beach of the Adriatic. They would like me to go at 5,000 feet, turn off the motor, and eject at 5,000 feet right when I'm over the beach, have the jet land in the water. Hopefully I land on the beach and Prosecco to follow. That is the plan. And I think it's not a bad plan at this point.
It seems better than the alternatives.
Yep. And that is kind of the moment where it was like, well, we have about 8 or 9 minutes left to discuss this, but ejection seems imminent. We launched the Aviano CSAR helicopter, of which we have one that is not currently involved out east in the efforts that NATO is doing right now. And they launched, and they're on their way to that point as well. And that is when Gary, who was talking to the Lockheed guy says, will the gear come up? And I said, they absolutely will come up. I raised him about 90 minutes ago. And he says, do it. So we raised the gear. It cost me nothing. If I'm going to eject, I guess I don't care if the gear are up or gear down. And that is when the Lockheed guy says he could possibly land it on the belly with no gear, which on its own would be pretty weird and hasn't been done often in the last, and to my knowledge, not in the last 25 years has it happened. But we have some things that are going to make even that not great. I have a centerline jamming pod, which is a big jamming pod, so the jet becomes a very difficult unicycle.
184 pod?
131, okay. Even bigger.
Yep.
So we've got a big 131 unicycle out there, which will cause problems. And then those darn cables are still strong.
Yep.
And it is a bad idea to land over a raised cable without gear, because the cable can come if you're not handling the jet perfectly and the nose leans forward, the cable would come right over the pitot tube, over the radar, and then hopefully over the canopy, or worse, through the canopy, and then obviously problems there. We have 4,400 feet of runway between the two center cables. So we discuss, well, how long is it going to take him to stop? And the Lockheed guy replies, I have no idea. No one has ever done this, and there is no math to be done. And that was kind of the last bit of data before the silence on the radio. And I said, I'm going to do that. And people have asked, why that and not ejection? And I don't have a good answer. I have no idea. But it was a clear day. The weather was good. The winds weren't bad. And it seemed like landing it on the belly was possible. One of the not fun parts of doing that procedure is you have to turn off the motor as soon as you touch ground to stop the fire hazard, hopefully save the motor, which isn't necessarily my priority at this point, but to reduce the chance of, if you do start cartwheeling, to limit that you might not start a fire. So when you do that, you lose those hydraulics, which I'm going to need to steer the jet onto the runway, since obviously I can't use braking to keep the jet under the runway because I got no brakes because the gear are up. So now these conversations probably happened in real time, about as fast as I'm telling them to you right now is about how fast it went before we were on a 10-mile final with clearance to land, and my hook is still halfway down.
Yep.
I raised it, but it's
can't
half.
go all the way up.
Can't go back all the way up. It only comes about halfway up. So I've got to clear that third cable by a little bit. I don't know. I've made up a guess in my mind of about 500 feet. And the approach now has to be very delicate because the risk at this point is having a wing dip into the ground, left or right, and then the jet spinning sideways due to that extra friction, and that would start probably a flip or a cartwheel or something like that. The other risk is going off the prepared surface, off the nice flat concrete, and into the grass where likely something is going to dig into the soft earth and then cause the flipping or the cartwheeling. So that is our biggest enemy right now, is flipping the jet over on the landing. And it is public record now on YouTube because enough people knew this event was going to happen that it's was filmed a few times and is out there. But the landing, actually coming in and clearing that cable and touching down, wasn't as difficult as I maybe would have assumed it would be.
Yeah, so without the gear down, less drag, so the airplane's not flying normally.
Lighter than I've ever been.
Yep. Without the gear down, you don't have the angle of attack AOA indications in the HUD. So did you calculate your landing speed, or did someone else just tell you what airspeed to fly?
We did both. And we were different by 2 numbers, and I just did whatever the other guy said.
Yep, so you're flying that airspeed, but without all the normal indications in the HUD. The airplane probably doesn't feel quite right because it's not in takeoff and landing gains, which the F-16 goes into a special set of takeoff and landing flight control performances. So you're flying it as if it's a normal airplane, but without your normal indications, without that drag. And you say it was easier than you thought it would be.
Yeah, probably one of the disconcerting things was turning on the emergency power unit, turning on the EPU, and the HUD. When we do this in the simulator, always comes back in about a second. You get the HUD back.
Yeah, I like my HUD.
It was not a second. It was several seconds, which felt like a lifetime because I think this procedure is probably, I don't think I would have tried it without a HUD, without being able to see the flight path marker. The HUD comes back, and another fun thing that, as it happened, I almost chuckled to myself, is the gear warning horn goes off. I
wouldn't have thought of that until it happened.
I didn't either.
Yep, and so it's making noise at you all the way down.
So, and I hit a button that at this stage in my life I had never hit, and we have a button to silence that horn, saying, the jet saying, you're making a bad choice here. You're getting slow and low to the ground, and your gear's not down. Don't forget to raise your gear. And I chuckled as I turned that warning off, saying, no thank you, jet, I would like to keep my gear up.
This is actually what I want to do today.
Yeah, that's right. So I chuckled at that, and then the touchdown is not so bad, and I still have some hydraulics from the emergency power unit, and using kind of steering with the airspeed controls with the rudder and the stick, trying to keep it level as primary, and then hopefully keep it onto the runway. We get I start drifting a little bit to the right, which I'm doing my best to control, but as you get slower and slower, you have less control authority, and the jet's going to go to the direction that the wind wants to blow it. And at about what I remember is about 70 to 80 knots is when I hit that next cable. And that was quite aggressive.
So you land.
Yep.
You feel the ECM pod crunch underneath it?
Not crunch, more it looks visually at the end like we just set a 131 pod on a belt sander and left for a week. That is what the 131 pod looks like. And that's kind of what it felt like.
It it didn't, it's on the centerline station, so the jet doesn't fall off either way.
You're just riding that unicycle.
Okay.
Yep, and you're just grinding it slowly down. It's not incredibly loud. It's not incredibly violent. And it doesn't feel like almost like we set it onto that 131 pod and slowly ground it down.
I would have thought it would have been loud.
Boom.
Yeah,
right?
So the scraping noise of going along the ground, not significant?
Not so much that I remember it being terrifying. Also, the actual touchdown moment due to ground effect. So I have pranged an F-16 on the ground quite a few times in my life because there's not a lot of ground effect, which is an aeronautical thing that the lower you get to the ground, there's no, that parasitic drag and that wingtip vortice drag kind of stops the lower you get to the ground. And we had almost none because of how low we were. So it was actually quite smooth in that last 4 to 5 feet as a touchdown. So that wasn't so bad. Hitting the cable, which So I had 4,400 feet, cleared the first one by about 500. I got about 3,900 feet to the cable. Now it's still going about 80 when I hit it. And I would describe that to you as driving your car, going exactly the same speed as I was, 70 to 80 miles an hour, and hitting a curb. That's exactly what it sounded like. It was loud, it was violent, and it put the jet airborne again. So I went up into the air, no more grinding, and then boom, crashed it down. And when that crashed down was about the moment that the airspeed in the HUD went away, which we lose the airspeed in the HUD at about 60 knots. That's when the jet doesn't know how fast it's going per se. And that was like a really good feeling. Like, I'm slower than 60. And the fear for the cable was obviously the cable coming over the top of the nose, which
Were you thinking about that as you approached
the
it?
whole time? Yep.
Yeah.
That is
You're thinking, I'm not slowing down as fast as I wanted to, thought I would.
This cable's coming up. I cannot let this thing go over the top of the canopy. I don't know what's going to happen. Or is that cable just going to catch that 131 pod right, rip it right off, turn me sideways because I don't hit it perpendicular, start this cartwheel now at 80 or 90 knots? And none of those things happened. All luck. So crash back down after that cable. Loud, violent. I have never watched my own tapes, but I've heard that I said something not for this podcast when it crashed back down. That's what they've told me. And that's about that moment is when I realized this is going to work. Even if it goes really bad now at 50 knots or 40 knots, it's probably not even going to go that bad.
Yes.
I'm going to walk away from this thing one way or another. And the jet settles kind of to one side, settles to the left, and a lot of luck at this point. Doesn't scrape any of the AMRAMs, doesn't really break up the jet too bad. Destroyed the ECM pod, of course, scraped up one of the left gas tank, and then the rear ventricles are...
Yeah, they're done.
Those need to be replaced.
Yep. Unscrew those, though. Put new ones on.
Put new ones on. That's cheap. So the jet has kind of settled and tips over to the side, and now I'm still on emergency power, which means I'm burning hydrazine, which is disconcerting. And the first time I've done
Toxic.
that. And yeah, very bad. And I found out how many breaths of air under oxygen it takes me to emergency egress in F-16, and the answer is 2. So... one big breath, take off as many things as you can, get the canopy open, one big breath, jump out. And the jump out was obviously shorter than normal.
Yeah,
so
that's good. It was safer.
Yep.
Didn't twist an ankle.
No, didn't twist an ankle. Didn't even have to tuck and roll. Just kind of stepped down out of there and then ran into the grass at a 45-degree angle for a few hundred yards.
Yeah, how far away did you run? We always say run away until you feel dumb.
I felt dumb, and I would say probably a good 150 yards.
Okay.
Good 150. And the ECM pod's smoking, so the jet's, it looks terrible. And it's just laying there on the runway. And every fire truck and ambulance and all the first responders roll up. And they come get me. They take my pistol from me. There were some funny things at this point. One of them asked, "Hey, can I have your other gun, the seat kick gun?" And I was like, "You can. It's over there.
It's in the airplane still.
Yep, it's right in that seat. You can have it if you like." I think somebody asked for my classified, and I said the same thing. And I was like, I don't have it. I don't have it anymore.
Why did they want your gun?
I have no idea. I wasn't at the questions asking stage of this event.
Yep.
Another kind of humorous thing is my doc gets me, we walk over and we get inside the ambulance, and they pulled right up in front of the jets, or on the runway in front of where the jets stop. And I was like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's go to wherever we're going next, which wound up being the hospital to get checked out. And they're like, no, let's just leave you here, get some vitals and get stabilized. And I pointed out the windshield of the ambulance, and I was like, do you see those AMRAMs that are pointed at us? They are armed. I don't know what's going on in their lives, but they are not happy. We should go anywhere in the world, but right here. I will go anywhere you guys want to go, but I don't want to stay here anymore. And they're like, all right, well, let's leave then. And I was like, let's go. We make it back to the hospital, the old standard checkout, blood, urine, make sure it wasn't my fault. that the wheel fell off. Make sure I wasn't up to no good. I came back to the squadron and got to see the guys, and it was great. And I ran over to our maintenance hangar, tried to tell them, boys, I have no idea what happened, but I'm good.
Yes.
And I hope you guys are good. And we'll figure it out in the coming months what happened to that stupid tire, but don't sweat it because we still had ATO sorties to fly. We couldn't do just the normal stand down. So as soon as we could clear that jet off the runway that night at 2 a.m., we got back to ATO flying the next day. And it was important to get everybody on the page of, well, that was weird. We'll talk about that in a month. Let's get back to work.
They do a one-time inspection of the wheels or anything to make sure that there wasn't something repeatable going on?
The SIB and AIB are published, and the SIB, which some of it is privileged, basically points to, we're not positive. It was the fourth time that jet had flown since its tire change. So whatever had happened when that thing got put on, it worked for a while, and it was just my day and my time when it happened to fail, which at my experience level at Aviano, I'd been flying there for 3 years, plus the extension that we talked about. And I was one of the more senior guys on base. And it was actually probably advantageous that it wound up happening to a more senior guy on that day.
A couple of months ago, I talked to our maintainers and I told them they're special. We'll just leave it at that. Special, very special and important for reasons like this, because every job that happens over there is critical.
Right.
It's critical and has to be done right. And they hold our lives and the aircraft in their hands. You know, it's really important what they do, and it's also really and obviously critical that we have pilots like you, Fuel, that can manage the situation when things don't go the way they're supposed to go, whether that's because a mistake was made or a part just failed. So that's an incredible story. So in the aftermath of that, you were submitted for the Collegian Trophy, which is a national level award for the United States Air Force. An incredibly special award. I didn't realize how special it was until I was there. So myself and Trip went to D.C. with Fuel, and his whole family was there. And the Collegian Trophy is presented by the Kolligian family, who lost a family member in the 50s. And they felt so passionate about it that they created this trophy that has been presented every year. And the family is the ones that present the trophy. They're very special people. They are incredibly dedicated, incredibly patriotic, and they present this every year at the Pentagon. And the award is presented by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So that lets you know the level of importance that the United States Air Force puts on this. And so I was honored to be there. The presentation was amazing. It was in Airman's Hall in the Pentagon, which I'll just say, like, if any of you ever have a chance to go to the Pentagon, take that opportunity. I've only been there a handful of times, but Abu put it really well. It's like a museum, and it's a really cool place to be. And the Airman's Hall is even cooler. It's surrounded by glass engravings of every airman that has won the Medal of Honor. And so you can just read that before the ceremony, and you just have such a vibe for the United States Air Force and what is really important to us. And the type of stuff I'm going to talk about later in the podcast just seems so trivial compared to this. It's important because it keeps our day-to-day going, but what's really important is to just recapture who we are. And so it was a great opportunity for me just to recapture that in the Pentagon, surrounded by engravings of every one of our heroes and what they've done and why we exist. And in that presence, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, who is an incredibly impressive individual, General Alvin, presented it, knew the story by heart, presented it, was incredibly impressive. And there was our guy, Fuel, receiving that for his incredibly brave, smart actions and his calm, cool demeanor. So that was how I viewed that day. How did you view the presentation of the award, and how was that week and the experience with the Kolligian family for you?
I had never been to D.C. was the starting point. So that in itself was awesome. Went up a day early. So the whole thing was surreal from the beginning. My folks are there. My in-laws are there. My wife's there. And seeing all the museums and the monuments and walking through all that the day prior, going to Arlington the day before that, and then going into the Pentagon for the first time for me was awesome. I stayed another day after and toured the Pentagon on Friday before I came back. The building is so cool. But on the day of the ceremony itself was fantastic. Meeting General Alvin, who was, as you said, super impressive, very personable, and really made the day special for us and my family, and gave his remarks with no notes. So
Yes.
You could tell he wasn't just reading to go through the motions. He knew a lot about the family presenting the award, and then about the event itself, and that was awesome. And then we went to lunch after with the family and got to know them a lot more, and they are so cool. And they had been putting on this award now for 65 years. They hadn't missed one, presenting this thing every year for the last 65, which was awesome to be part of that, and they're so cool.
I remember I met one of I think she might have been a niece, but she talked about how she was a teenager, but she had been going to the ceremony since she was a toddler.
Right.
And that the people in the safety office would hold her when she when she was trying to wander off. And that is this family's life.
Right.
It is dedicated to this. They drop what they're doing so that they can be here every year.
Which is awesome people to be around. And I hope I get to run into them again. They're mostly based out of Boston, so more trips to the Northeast for me to hopefully hang out with them again. But they were so cool. Yeah, and I just had every moment from arriving in D.C. till leaving was fantastic. Perfect weather, tons of fun with my family, and the Pentagon was great, and the presentation was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that today, Fuel. I hope everyone else finds that as motivating as I did. Like I said, sometimes we just need a little bit of a break or a recage from the admin that we sometimes get caught up in. I certainly do every day, and just see what we're about in the Air Force. And that is flying airplanes safely, effectively, and then being prepared to employ in a combat environment, and recognizing the people who do that incredibly well is really important. So thanks, Fuel, for what you did that day, and glad to have you back here at McIntyre.
Glad to be home. Thanks, boss. Thanks for having me.
Okay, our next guest today is Master Sergeant Steadman Demarco. Steadman is one of our leads for MCA in the maintenance group. Do you have a title that they've associated with that?
So I haven't actually been assigned a title per se. I've kind of taken over what I see that needs to be done with our ACE program, and been working towards getting the airmen that we have spun up for MCA.
So Steadman is one of our lead crew chiefs, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I asked him to come just to talk about how MCA is affecting maintenance, and within that community, how they're dealing with this Typhoon Fox and what we're doing and what they think of it. And so I'll start with my first question is, were you guys thinking ACE before we started talking about Typhoon Fox?
Yes, sir. So we actually started, me and Master Sergeant Cooley started back in 2018. We got kind of tasked with thinking about ACE and what does that concept look like. And then it kind of got put on pause for a little bit. But recently, over the past like eight months or so, we kind of ramped up, and we've been really putting a lot of thought into all this and figuring out what the next step is. And I think that's been difficult, especially on the maintenance side. For the past 8 months or so that we've been working on trying to get our MCA capabilities up to par. Thinking about the whole ACE concept, we've taken the idea of ACE and what that means and how MCA is involved in ACE. Ideally, we've been taking groups of airmen through other shops, and we've put them in situations where they can learn something outside their career field. And it's been a process. There's been some challenges associated with it.
Yeah, it's super tough because no one's even told us to do it. That's one of the hardest parts, is no one has actually said, 169th Fighter Wing, you need to be ACE capable and have X number of multi-capable airmen. It's not even an official tasking. People have just been talking about it. And so people like yourself and Cooley, who are thinking like, hey, I think we need to go this direction because you can read the tea leaves and see what's on the news and you kind of understand it. But no one ever told us. And so eventually we decided it was just time to go. And so when I said it's time to go, I asked you to do it with limited guidance. And so your interpretation of, yeah, this is a challenge. It bums me out that I had to ask for that, but I understand it because we still don't know. And you're being asked basically to run with scissors and figure it out.
Oh, it's definitely a double-edged sword in that, you have all this room to do kind of what you need to do, but also there's little to no guidance on this as to how you do it. When that's been the tough challenge of this whole MCA ACE concept of, we need to get this done. We need these X amount of people trained up to this degree. How do we get there? There's nothing there. So that's what we've kind of been thinking about, me and Cooley, and actually several others to get us there. And that's what the island is for the maintenance side of the house. So what we've done is we've kind of set aside 4 jets to practice those MCA capabilities. We assign a group of individuals such as like structures or phase. Or
ammo.
Yep, ammo.
It's always out in spot 20.
Yep, a spot was
I think you guys set me up in spot 20 pretty much every time I fly, so that I can see the ace that's going on, which was awesome.
That's our goal, is to get everybody kind of well-rounded and able to do the launch recovery inspections, refuel. That's a big one too. That sort of stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things that are on my mind, the first one is do you see us, Steadman, as being able to do this safely, both in training and real world? Obviously, real world will be more risk acceptance, but can we do this safely?
Yes. We've kept safety at the forefront of our minds when we kind of like develop these plans, or when we talk about training individuals, and we have safety observers, looking at the MC airmen who are doing tasks outside of their career field, saying, like they have a very close watch on them.
Yeah,
and everything they do is monitored, and it's by the book. Like you said, when we go downrange, it's going to be kind of outside that accepted risk.
Yes. So that's one of my number one things, is we have to be able to do this safely, because it's still not, we have to take a little bit of risk, but I really appreciate you guys having safety monitors and following that intent, because man, we can't get too far into the risk zone on this. One of my other things I've wondered about is how people usually tell me, like, everything's going great, sir. And I hope that you won't if it's not. But how do you think, and this is my question for everyone who's listening to this podcast, how is it going mentality-wise into asking people to do more than just their regular job? Are people excited about it? Is it a mixed bag? Do they feel like too much is being put on their plate, or are airmen feeling like, this is our tasking, we got to do this, and I'll figure out a way, or a little bit of everything?
It's actually a little bit of everything, but I will say that initially it was kind of a tough ask. I would go to shop supervisors or just to individuals and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. What are your thoughts on it? Can we get people over here to do this? A little bit of pushback at first, but I think as again the ACE concept idea kind of flushed out and everyone kind of started to realize what that meant, it's kind of pulled a 180, and people are coming up to me, hey, when can I get into doing the next island event? And like I want to do this. Everyone's really motivated, and actually I've had several one-on-one sit downs with the people who have completed the island events, and nothing but good things from it. They're all pretty excited about what they learned. They feel like they walked away kind of accomplished, and their horizons kind of broadened, if you will. So it's been a mixed bag, but we have really crested that hill of, how are we getting there? Okay, we need to do this, and everyone's kind of going that way.
That's awesome. Well, I guess what I would say is that has nothing to do with officers, and it has everything to do with NCOs and senior NCOs, because that's who the airmen look up to and the staff sergeants look up to. And so if we get buy-in from that level, then we're in really good shape. So thanks for taking the bull by the horns here, and then being able to sell it, but not sell it by just being yourself and everyone else who's leading it, just being genuinely bought into it. And then people can read that, and then it becomes a culture. So I think that's great. My next concern is, so if someone learns a new task, so I see it, right? They learn to launch a jet out. They learn to refuel. I went out POL and refueled one day as well. I did that. Cool. Yeah. So here's what I figured out. It's like, oh yeah, I got this. And then here's what I figured, like 2 weeks later, like I will have forgotten it. And so
most definitely will.
And so what do you think in terms of how do we manage this so that it's not just we do a little bit of training and we feel good about ourselves, but 6 months from now we've forgotten it all? How do we manage that? Can we manage the revisit rate on it? Can we keep people competent? Do we just keep a small group of people really competent at a bunch of tasks and other people? Or are we still, in my mind, I haven't figured that out yet.
We've been throwing around ideas as well. I don't think anyone's kind of figured it out because and I've asked other units before, and everyone get a different answer from everyone. I think so. What we've gone with, and what our current plan is right now, is we're going to get an X amount of people through the island of MCA training, and we're going to try to do it biannually. Probably about every 6 months or so, we're going to make sure those people who have gone through the island have some sort of refresher training. What that refresher training looks like, I'm not sure yet.
Yep.
Because it's too much of an ask to have 3 people come out for 3 weeks at a time, every time for refresher. That can't happen. That's a large training and refresher burning on people or shops. And that is something that, again, we, as a challenge that we haven't fully figured out. And so we're open to all ideas and, any suggestions that people may give.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to figure it out on the fly. And I think some jobs will be less of a revisit rate, and other ones that are higher risk will be more of a revisit rate. So I would just encourage you and everyone else just to dig into it and not have a template that's a one size fits all. We're going to have to figure it out as we go.
We're definitely an open book on this. That's something that we were very flexible on. I've changed the program in the middle of from day to day just because I didn't like the way something looked. For example, we only had one flight on one day, and the next day I was like, well, that's not really good training. We didn't utilize, the maximum amount of time there. So we upped it to 2 flights in the following day to try to make sure that the training that our MCA guys are getting is proficient.
Okay. So speaking of islands, you mentioned islands. If Typhoon Fox were to become a reality, we would likely be stationed somewhere on an island. Do you think that our local training would be enhanced if we were to, say, practice it on an island, like maybe in the Caribbean? Would that be an enhancement to our training?
I think it absolutely would.
And would it also be an enhancement to morale?
Yes, most definitely. I think that would be something that we could train and get and hit a lot of our DLOs, METs, and get people excited to go down there. Number one, and number two, practice what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Put it into play. Let's figure out exactly where our strengths and weaknesses are. Where are the things that we can improve on? There's got to be stuff that we are not thinking of that we kind of do that fail forward kind of mentality on a lot of this stuff.
Well, that's a great segue. We don't have it set yet, but I am trying really hard, and I haven't. I'm sure it's leaked out already, but we're trying really hard to get to a Caribbean island this summer and have it be an effective training exercise and also a really good morale boost. So we'll see if we can make that happen and have a little bit of a reward for all the hard work. And in the meantime, we'll give it a whirl at this exercise over this drill and see where we're at. And like I talked about, it's crawl, walk, run, and we may be past crawl at this point. I think we're more in the walk phase, but we'll see where we're at and we'll make adjustments. And I'm just really happy with how everything's going. So thanks for everything that you're doing, Steadman. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to talk about?
No, just can I give a shout out because there's actually been a lot of people that have really been helpful in this stuff. Master Sergeant Browder over in Security Forces, Force Protection, he does a really great job in working with maintenance and making sure that all of our training gets met.
A couple of things that got sent to me over from the maintenance group are Master Sergeant Jory Middleton, been doing a great job, Staff Sergeant Nate Sweet, and Staff Sergeant Robert Marston for leading the 8-ship backshop personnel have been doing a great job also. I've seen so many people out there doing such a great job. I just really appreciate the smiles on their faces and how ready they are to embrace. So thanks to everyone who's done the MCA training, and we're looking forward to awarding the actual MCA badges or patches coming here shortly. So thanks for being here. The final item that we have, things from our comment box. Like I've said from the beginning, the back gate is a bit of an embarrassment that we haven't been able to take care of, but I'm happy to say today that literally while I'm recording this podcast, they are working on the back gate. So I'm hoping by the time that you hear this, it is fully open. And what I want you to know is, regardless of the fact of whether I'm embarrassed or happy about it, it is a priority for me, and I'm just going to keep on going until it's done. And our CE guys are the same way. This is their work. They are staying after it. It is not their fault. They are staying on the contractor. Between contracting and CE, they are staying on this to get it done, and so we'll keep pressing forward. Another question that we got this week dealt with the base gym. Basically, it was, hey Vito, why do we have all this used equipment from Shaw? Some of it's broke. Why can't we get better stuff? Can't we do better? And the answer is, I feel you. As anyone knows who goes to the gym, I'm there fairly frequently. I noticed it when we got the stuff from Shaw a year or two ago, that it was a little bit more beat up than the last round of stuff that we got from Shaw. What I can tell you is the FSS is on it. The machines that are broken there now, one of them is legitimately broke. The rest of them is more just buttons, which they're still working on, but still makes the machines functional. I understand the frustration, but here's the reality. The Guard is not funded at the same level as the active duty. We are not getting all new equipment. And so, like many things, we have to make do. I have a lot of pride in the fact that we make do with less. I hear you, and we can do a little bit better. The FSS is on getting the parts that are broken repaired on the machines. At the same time, I asked them, what else can we do? We talked about the current fiscal situation, and FSS suggested that with the way things seem to be rolling with fallout money every year, that we build a recapitalization plan. And so basically our strategy is going to be, we're still going to take hand-me-downs, but we're going to try to recapitalize a portion of our equipment every year with fallout money. And so they are prepping to get some fallout money, and they're building the request to grab a handful of machines. And I think that's a great strategy moving forward. We're never going to be able to buy all new stuff, but if we can just get a little bit here and there, we can make it a better place. So like I said, with all comments, I really appreciate them. And anytime we get a comment, I know that means probably 10 times that number of people or more are thinking it. So please keep those coming. Thanks again for everything that you're doing. Thanks for serving. Thanks for being a part of our great unit, and looking forward to seeing you all around drill. Talk to you next month.